My name's Don. I'm the Ontario sales rep, and we're going to be talking about conference systems. So this is something that that I do quite a bit of. And if you are not familiar, excuse me, with our conference systems, this could be something where this could be an area that could really help you. We do quite a few of these throughout the year, and yeah, it's a great area, and it's not very difficult. There just needs to be some forethought as to how you're going to go about it, and information that we'll need to help you with that. But once you do it, it's actually something very easy to do, and can be very beneficial for you. So let's get right into it. So the TS-900 is our wireless system, and we've been working at conference systems for a number of years now. Since '78, we've been working with conference systems, and like anything else that TOA does, we've really put a lot of our experience and what we've come to understand about conference systems and keep improving every time. Plus, TOA has a great reputation for quality systems, and that's something that we're very proud of. So your customer's thinking about a conference system. Maybe they're suffering from confidentiality issues. Maybe there's it's breaking up and muting, and you're having trouble. They're having trouble in that way. Maybe it's hard to hear. Maybe they want to have a second language involved in the conference. These are all things that we can address with the TS-910. It's a wireless system. It's portable. It utilizes infrared, so that means that anything that is said within a room stays within a room because it doesn't go through the walls of the conference room. It prevents eavesdropping, and you don't have to worry about having a confidential business meeting when you're using our system. There's other things that are benefits for it as well. For instance, it doesn't have to be a permanent system. It can be a temporary system. I've had end users use our TS-910, and what they do is when they typically prepare for a big meeting, normally, of course, pens and pads of paper and water come out and so forth, but also the TS-910 delegate units are actually stored away for security reasons in a locked cupboard, and they have a cart and they bring them out. However many people are coming, that's how many they set out. Plus, they told me that there's a second room building that is set up for the TS-900 system, so they can just bring those units on the cart and take them over to that other room as well. So that's an interesting option for your customer to think about. There's other things that can be controlled by external equipment with RS-232. You can connect, there's an output for a recording device from the TS-910 central unit so that you can record the meeting that you're having. There's a voting function. So there's 3 buttons that we'll see on the delegate units, and there's 3 buttons that they can choose from, and the results will be shown on the central unit. There's a second channel to have a second language as part of the conference. It has built-in feedback suppression, which is a big help, especially if you're sharing between different rooms, and each room is a challenge on its own. If we look at the picture here, you can see the different examples of how the TS central unit can be hooked up. It has a number of inputs. You can see there's microphones coming in, so if in a particular case where there's maybe a council chambers that are going to be using this, there's probably going to be a gallery or an audience, and they may have town hall meetings, or they may have different things like that, taking questions from the audience. You can run microphones to the central unit. There's also outputs, not only the recording out that I talked about, but there's also a line out to a public address system. So if if there's not just a gallery, but maybe it is a town hall for the entire company, you can actually run a line out to your public address system, and then the meeting can be heard throughout different parts of the building if you want as well. There's a number of transmitters you can see at the top right that will be mounted on the ceiling. You'll notice that there are two numbers there, both the 905 and the 907. We'll get into that because there's a reason there's two part numbers for that. There are the delegate units there, both the chairman and the TS-902 delegate unit. And then if you're looking to, maybe there's an existing system, your customer now needs to expand, there is an expansion unit where you can add different delegate units that are wired. So there's different options there, and it can expand, which is nice. It's flexible in that way. So when we're talking about expanding, you see there it can max out to 192 wired and wireless delegate units. So that's nice to know. You can have a really quite a large system so that means that you can really take care of any size city council chamber as well as smaller boardrooms and so forth. So you're really not limited in size with this. There's, as I mentioned, voting results, 2 channels for audio. If you look at the central unit there, it's not hideous. So it could sit on a tabletop. You could have it out. It actually is quite attractive. Or if you want to have it as part of the audio rack, we do have mounting kits available for it as well. So you have that option. The delegate units, the 901 and 902, the chairman unit, which is the top picture, has a speech key, which means that if one of the delegates has been allotted 2 to 3 minutes to discuss a subject and they've gone over time, or if it's a heated meeting and they refuse to give up the mic, the chairman can cut them off, so that'll be nice. And there's that functionality there. If it's a completely wireless system, of course you're going to be using batteries, but if the customer just doesn't trust batteries, which I've come across as well, we do have AC adapters, the AD0910 AC adapter for each unit. It has a battery life indicator, and now it also has 3 dedicated mics, so that's new actually. It has been 2 mics for the longest time. Now there's 3. So the TS-903 was the standard type. That's around 14.5 inches from the base to the end. The 904 was just over 20 inches long. And now the TS-904SL-AS, it just rolls off the tongue, is an extended length microphone at 28 inches. We really like to name our equipment just so that you remember. So there's those 3 mics there that are available for you to use. If we go to the next picture, this is a piece of equipment that is where it gets tricky, and but it's not really once you get the hang of it. I'll explain why. This is the transceiver that would go on the ceiling. There's a 905 and a 907. It's easy to install, as you can see by the diagram on the side there. I cut that out of the manual so that we could see it. It's just a coax cable running back to the central unit. There's not much to it. There's a bracket that comes along with it so that there's a nice clean install. But the trick I want you to all remember if you're thinking about using this is that the cables have to be the same length for all of the transceivers. So if the transceiver, the 905 transceiver, if we're using 905s, if it's the furthest one away requires 20 feet of cable, all the cables should be 20 feet, even the one that's closest to the central unit, so that we can, so that everything's balanced and you don't start to get transmitting issues with that. They all have to be the same, but easy to install. And you can actually install it doesn't have to be in the ceiling. It could be a surface mount on the wall or even a microphone stand, but ceiling is definitely the cleanest look. If you're looking to expand, I mentioned the expansion unit. This is the TS-918 is for connecting up to 24 additional delegate units. So it's also, you connect to the central unit with a coax cable, and then this expansion unit connects to the bridging units by way of Cat5 cable. So pretty easy for connections. It also has a rack mount. If we go to the next slide, you'll see some of the bridging units. So the TS-919B1, like poetry, that's for single units, and the TS-919B14 can connect up to between 1 and 4 units. So all of these can be added if need be, and you're able to expand the system. Here are the delegate units, and there's no discernible distinction between the wired and the wireless, so they would fit right in. There's even the TS-911 is another, oh, for crying out loud, it's another chairman's unit if need be, so these are all available. I'm going to be talking about the 800 series in a minute. I'm not ignoring it. I just want to, I'll talk about it shortly. Here's how they're connected. As you can see, the TS-910 central unit is there, and it connects to the TS-918 with a coax cable. And then you have the option of just adding 1 or up to 4 units using either of the bridging connectors. Here's some other conference equipment that sometimes we forget about. Just a note, if you guys are able to mute your phones, some of the noise from your offices are coming through. So if you're able to mute it, that'd be great. Some other conference equipment that you might want to think about. There's the new mic that you can see, the 904 SL, the different transceivers. But you got to remember, if you're going to go wireless, each unit obviously needs a battery pack. So that's the BP900. So if you had 20 units, you're going to need 20 batteries. And then you're going to need enough battery chargers to make sure that all the batteries are ready when they're ready to go. There's the thought that you could just use 1 or 2. So if you had 20, you're going to require 3 battery chargers. But when they pull them out, you want to make sure that all the batteries are ready to rock, and none of the delegate units die because the battery was charged first and it's been sitting out of the charger for the longest. So there's, usually the customers are okay with that. It comes with its own power cord, just as a small mention. You don't need the AC adapter with the battery charger. It comes with its own power cord. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is if the area of the room is larger and you need more transceivers in the ceiling, you'll need one of the distributors that we have there, either the YW1022 to use with 2 transceivers, or the 1024 to use with 4. Because, and we'll talk about that later, about looking at the room size. So some advantages then, to go over it. It's resistant to interference, the TS-910. It's resistant to eavesdropping because whatever is said isn't going outside the room because it's infrared. It permits use in other rooms without crosstalk. There's no need to connect the conference units. Sometimes there's the fear that if one conference unit goes down, because if it's a wired system, because it goes down, it might take the others with it and take out a whole bank of delegate units. No reason to fear with this. No cables to worry about. You're easy to pick up and clean up, just like I had mentioned in that example with the boardroom. And it's really not that hard to install. It's single cables from the transceiver back to the central unit. It can handle up to 192 delegate units, the TS-900 system. The chairman and delegate units have built-in monitor speakers, so everybody's going to be at the boardroom table or in the council chamber. Whoever has a delegate unit will be able to hear quite easily. And we're able to record the sessions from the central unit. You can, there's an output to a third-party recording device. It's also scalable, so I touched on this a bit. The transceivers that are going to be in the ceiling, there's really 4 connections on the back of the central unit. So if you have 4 TS-905 ceiling transceivers, they can each have a home run back to the central unit. But what if you need more? What if it's a really large room? Well, then you can use that distributor that I mentioned, and even though there's 4 lines connecting to the central unit, it can then divide into 4 each. So you can have a total of 16 transceiver units in the ceiling using the distributors. And that brings me to my next slide. These are things that I cut out of the manual because they're very important when thinking about and planning for your conference system. We often, when you're asking us about audio, we often ask you not only for the dimensions of the room, but also the length and width, but also the height. And this is another area where height is important. As you can see, the TS-905 is really usable in ceilings that are between 2.5 meters to 4.5 meters. So you're talking 8 feet to just under 15 feet high ceilings. That's where the 905 works best. For anything higher than that, you've got to move to the TS-907, which is great for 5 to 7 meter ceilings, so 16 feet to 23 feet. So you want to be conscious of that so that the system works properly and there's no cutouts. Everything is covered properly. You can see also that the difference between the 905 and the 907, the radius shrinks a bit with the 907. It's coming down from a higher elevation, so the coverage, the radius of coverage has shrunk a little bit. And that you'll miss that 1 meter or 2 meters when you're doing something. If it's not covering areas properly, that 1 or 2 meters is you really miss it. So it's vital to know the height of the ceilings when you're doing it. Here's another one where a problem came up. This is the unit itself in 3 dimensions here. It's showing how the unit is transmitting the IR signal. It's 120 degrees, and then if you're looking at it from the side, it's a 90-degree beam coming out. What you have to look for in this situation is let me start again. What you have to look for is the furniture that your customer has in the space. That seems weird, but if you, in a boardroom, not so much. But if it's council chambers or something like that, often they have sort of a horseshoe type desk system or a semicircular system where the counselors are all around. And I've had some issues where the desk that they use also has a shelf, if you can imagine. It's sort of there's the desktop, and then a small wall goes up to it at the opposite side of the desk, opposite me, and there's a small shelf that comes up about eye level, and that is there for whatever reason, storage or whatever else. But the problem became that the delegate units were being sort of shoved underneath the shelf, and what was happening is blocking the signal. And then you've got an angry council and can't figure out why this new system they just bought is breaking down and not working as it should. And so you've got to always be alert as to the signal, where it is, where the units are going to be used, and that type of thing. One more important slide with regards to coverage. This is a big one as well for me. This is all another picture that's from the manual. You can see the top right with all the different circles. Those are circles of coverage. So the small white circles in the center are obviously the transceivers, and then the larger gray bubbles surrounding them are the area of coverage. That room is 30 by 30 meters, so that's a really big room. And you can see how they really covered it very well. I believe that between transceivers is 9 meters. They're spaced out that way. And then they have the radius of coverage is around, well, it's a little more than 6 meters radius. So it depends on what it is. That might be TS-905, I'm not sure. But they've covered the whole room. And that's what you have to think about. That's what we think about when we're helping you and we're designing it. Could that room have been covered with just 6? Yes. If you had moved everything over, taken away one of the vertical lines of transceivers there and then moved the other 2 lines over, maybe there's just a big, rectangular boardroom table running down the middle. Maybe the point is that all the units will be there and they'll be covered nicely. So yeah, it could have been. But in this room, it's showing how it's covered. There could be other units surrounding that are off to the side. I know council chambers have different setups where it's not just the councilors that need one. There's different attendants, and they sit in different places around the room. So you might just want to cover the room completely to make sure that it's there's no dead spots. And so you can think about it that way. So that's what you have to think about. When you're bringing information to us, you can let us know it's a boardroom, furniture, or it's a city council chamber. This is how it looks. Is it a round table? That bottom picture there of the single transceiver, you can see that the total radius is between 10 to 15 meters. Maybe it's just a large round table. And that would provide just enough coverage, possibly. Then you only need one. But this is what we're thinking about when we're coming up with design. And that's something you can think about as well as you're looking at it. Maybe you can start designing yourself and getting a good idea of what your customer will need. So I added those because they're really, I always end up looking for that information. It's pretty vital. So the next slide, we're just going to talk about the TS-800 for a second. So if you wanted to, you could really call the TS-800 TS-910 Lite, I guess, because really what it is the same system minus some of the functions. So yes, it's still flexible. Yes, it's still easy to configure. Yes, it utilizes infrared technology, so no eavesdropping, etc. Still has the good sound quality that the 910 has, but there's things about it that are not in there. There's a picture of it next slide, I believe. There we go. You'll notice that there's not as much going on with the 800. For instance, there's only one microphone in. There's only one record out. There's no line out. There's that PC connection still. So there's different things that it cannot do. But this may be something that your customer is concerned about. Maybe you've approached them with a preliminary quote of the TS-910 and they sort of, oh, that's a lot of money. Then you can always come back to us and we can give you an example, a quote for the 800, and it'll save you some money there. So actually, is it here? I've got a little comparison chart here, what it does and what it doesn't do. The TS-910 can handle up to 192 units, as I mentioned, whereas the 800, 64 of them. The TS-910 has a second channel for that second language that you wanted in the meeting. The 800 doesn't. There's no voting with the 800. Maybe that's not a big deal. And then you can save a little money for your customer. They don't vote. It's not a big deal. They just have meetings. There's no line out, as I mentioned. Well, that's okay. They don't need to broadcast their meetings. It's just in that room. Well, there's some savings there. The 910 has 2 mic out inputs and 3 auxiliary inputs. The 800 just has 1 of each. So there's a savings there. And let me know if you're interested in that, or let your regional sales manager know wherever you're calling from. We have a number of systems around the country where our equipment is used, and to great success. This is just a few. This is a sneak peek. To finish off our webinar here, this is a sneak peek. I had the privilege of going to Japan last year, and when I did, I went and visited the research development building in Takarazuka, and they were working on the conference system, the TS-800 and 920. So here it is here. As you can see, they redesigned it, gave it a cool new spacecraft look, which is neat, and so just a revamp. But a lot of the good things, of course, that we had are still included. So they have improved the sound quality with the 820, 920. Now you don't need to record out. Now there's built-in recording with internal memory and so forth. So you don't need to have the record out. It's got it internally. The feedback suppression is still there. Plus, there's 2 new microphones. You might be wondering why we've got so many bloody microphones, but there is a reason, and that's because we have so many requests. So many people use it in so many different ways, and we get a lot of feedback from our dealers and our customers. A lot of times, people are speaking and they have their laptop in front of them. So you got to have the microphone long enough that it can come over the top, or they're having a whole bunch of stuff in front of them, they need it this length, or they really only need it short. So these are all, we're responding to the feedback that we're getting. And these new microphones, as you can see, they're adjustable not only at the base, but now at the top, at the neck. So just some added adjustment features there. Very similar as far as what they can handle, how many units are available to each. I talked about the new microphone, the new design they can use. They can go backwards and use our existing microphone lineup. No wired system, which is interesting. So that's coming up. There will be no wired system on either, just as a heads up.